There was a pattern, and I was starting to notice it. The man who followed me off the subway for 3 consecutive nights simply disappeared. My abusive ex-boyfriend, who had been sending threatening messages for weeks, suddenly stopped. The coworker who made inappropriate comments was transferred to another city overnight. The landlord who threatened eviction inexplicably became compliant. "You're very lucky," my best friend said. But it wasn't luck. It was something more. Someone was eliminating problems from my life with surgical efficiency. Someone was protecting me from the shadows, and I had no idea who it was or why. I was just Iris Chen, a social worker working with at-risk families in Seattle. Nothing special. Nothing that warranted invisible protection. But then I started receiving messages from unknown numbers. "You're safe. You always will be." And I saw the same black car parked outside my apartment every night. The same man watching from afar, tall and dangerous, with scars that told stories of violence. Damian Cross. The name whispered with fear in the streets of Seattle. Head of the city's most powerful criminal organization. And for some reason I still didn't understand. He had decided I was worth protecting. This is the story of how I discovered I was being hunted, and how the most dangerous man in the city eliminated every threat before I even realized the danger. Hello, dear souls. Thank you so much for being here and supporting this channel. Your presence means the world to me. If you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Comment below where you're listening from. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. I've always considered myself lucky, not in the traditional way. I never won the lottery, I never found money in the street, but lucky in the little moments that averted disaster. That creepy guy who followed me from the subway for 3 months, he suddenly moved to Portland. My ex-boyfriend Marcus, who sent threatening messages after I broke up with him, he simply stopped. The aggressive patient who grabbed me at the community center, he stopped showing up for appointments. "You're so lucky," Sophie said, during our break at the Riverside Family Services Center, after a brutal day dealing with domestic violence cases. I was too tired to do anything but nod in agreement. "Iris, remember that guy who was bothering you in front of your building? That super creepy guy who knew your routine? He changed address," I said, taking a sip of cold coffee. "The janitor said he got a job in Portland overnight, without even properly packing his bags." "This isn't change, it's escape." Sophie studied me over her cup. "Don't you find it strange? Whenever someone bothers you, that person simply disappears. I prefer to think the universe is taking care of me." "The universe or someone else?" She raised her eyebrows. "Perhaps you have a secret admirer, a guardian angel." I laughed. "I work with families in crisis, and I live in an apartment without an elevator on Capitol Hill. If I have a guardian angel, they have terrible taste in whom to protect." But her words stayed in my head as I walked home that afternoon. It was true that I'd had an unusual run of good luck over the past 18 months. Problems that should have worsened simply didn't materialize. Marcus, who had started showing up at my building drunk and furious, suddenly stopped completely. He claimed his probation officer transferred him to another jurisdiction. The coworker who made inappropriate comments was transferred to another office. Even the guy who tried to rob me in the parking lot was apparently arrested the same night for a completely different crime. Pure luck. It had to be. I went upstairs to my apartment, thinking only about showering and sleeping. Mrs. Park was in the hallway struggling with shopping bags. "Let me help you." I picked up the heaviest bags and followed her to her door. "You're a good girl, Iris. Too good for this town," she said in her Korean accented English. "You need someone to look after you." "I can manage perfectly well on my own, Mrs. Park." Maybe. She gave my hand a cryptic pat. "Or maybe someone is already looking after you, and you just don't realize it." She disappeared into her apartment before I could ask what she meant. In my own apartment, I took a shower, ate instant noodles for dinner, and collapsed into bed. My cell phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "Sleep well. You are safe." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Wrong number. It had to be. I deleted the message and tried to forget. But 3 nights later, after another exhausting day mediating a volatile custody situation, I received another message from a different number. "The man who followed you home last week won't bother you again. I promise." This time I didn't delete it. I took a screenshot and showed it to Sophie the next day. "That's terrifying," she said immediately. "Iris, you need to go to the police." And what can I say? Did someone text me saying I'm safe? There's nothing threatening here. Someone is watching you closely enough to know when men follow you home. That's the threat. Sophie analyzed the messages, both from disposable numbers, sent late at night. Iris, this is stalker behavior, or a protector. Is there a difference? There's a very fine line. Sophie handed me back the phone. Please be careful. Change your routine. Let the building superintendent know. Maybe you can stay with me for a few days. I promised I would consider it, but I didn't really think I was in danger. The messages, although strange, didn't seem threatening. They seemed protective, as if someone was watching me, but not spying on me. Even so, I started paying more attention, noticing things that had previously gone unnoticed, like the man across the street who always seemed to be there when I left for work, different men taking turns, but always someone watching, or the way my life's problems resolved themselves with suspicious efficiency. The landlord who had been threatening eviction suddenly became compliant. The insurance company that had denied my claim mysteriously reversed its decision. Small things, but they were piling up. Someone was interfering in my life. The question was, why? A week later, I was leaving the community center after a double shift when I saw him. Tall, dark hair, expensive coat, standing next to a black car across the street. He stood there, watching the entrance, watching me. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. He didn't pretend to be doing something else. He just watched me with an intensity that should have been frightening. But somehow, it wasn't. Ignoring Sophie's advice to avoid confrontation, I crossed the street and walked directly toward her. Can I help you? Up close, he was even more impressive. Striking features, a small scar above his left eyebrow, dark eyes that seemed to see right through me, visible tattoos on his hands, disappearing under his sleeves. He looked expensive and dangerous in equal measure. I'm making sure you get home safely. His voice was deep and controlled. I don't need a babysitter. Obviously necessary, since you just crossed the street to confront a stranger you suspected of following you. A slight smile touched her lips. Iris Chen, that's not exactly cautious behavior. How do you know my name? I know a lot about you. He spoke calmly, as if it were a normal conversation. Your work schedule, your commute home, your preference for the corner grocery store. I know you work 60 hours a week and are saving up for a master's degree, and that you have terrible taste in coffee, but an excellent instinct for dealing with people. My heart raced. You're stalking me. I'm protecting you. There's a difference. He stepped away from the car, straightening up to his full height. I'm Damien Cross, and I've been looking after you for the last 18 months. The name hit me like a physical slap. Damien Cross. I'd heard whispers about him. The man who controlled Seattle's criminal underworld. Trafficking, extortion, turf wars. The kind of man who shows up in police investigations but is never caught. Why would you do that? My voice came out weaker than I intended. Because 18 months ago you mediated a custody case involving the 6-year-old daughter of one of my men. He was abusive, violent. He shouldn't have had custody. And you fought for that child. You testified against him in court, even knowing he had dangerous connections. You saved her, Iris. You put your own safety at risk to save a girl you barely knew. I remembered that case. Sofia Torres, 6 years old, with big, frightened eyes. Her father had beaten her mother almost to death, and when her mother fled, he wanted custody. I had testified about the dangerous environment, the history of violence. The judge listened to me. Sofia stayed with her mother. And that man worked for you? He was working. That's in the past. I fired him immediately. Damien's voice hardened. I don't tolerate violence against women and children. When I found out what he did, and how you put yourself at risk to protect that child, I thought, here's someone good, someone rare, someone who should be protected. So you've been harassing me for 18 months because I was kind to a child? I've been protecting you because you're the kind of person who makes the world a better place just by existing. And people like you need someone to protect them in a city like this. He approached the car. I'm not asking for anything, Iris. I'm just telling you the truth because you've started to notice. I'd rather you know I'm here than waste energy being paranoid about unknown threats. This is insane. But you're safe. You've been safe for 18 months because I made sure of it. And you'll stay safe because I'm not going to stop. He opened the car door. Julian will take you home. He's been your follower all along. You've probably seen him around the neighborhood. A second man appeared beside the driver. Short and stocky, with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating appearance. Julian, meet Iris. Iris Julian. He's been making sure no one bothers you on your walks home. Consider him your new official escort. I don't want a companion. I want you to stop following me. I can't do that. Damien's voice was firm. But I can be more transparent so you feel safer knowing who's watching. Go home, Iris. Sleep. Think about it. And when you're ready to discuss it rationally, you know where to find me. I don't know where to find you. Yes, you know. He gestured to Julian. I'm wherever you are. I'll be in front of your building tonight. I'll be at the community center tomorrow when you're working. I'll be everywhere you go. Because that's how I protect you. I should have refused. I should have left. I should have called the police. Instead, I got in the car. Julian drove in silence while I processed everything. Damien Cross had been watching me for 18 months, eliminating threats, keeping me safe without my knowledge. It was the scariest thing I'd ever heard. It was also the reason I'd felt so exceptionally safe lately. He's not a bad man, Julian said quietly as we parked in front of my building. What he does, the protection, is genuine. He doesn't do it for other people, only for you. That doesn't make it any less frightening. No, but it makes it real that he cares about you, Ms. Chen, in his own complicated way. I went upstairs, locked all the doors and stood by the window, and there was Damien's car, across the street. My phone vibrated with a new message from an unknown number. I know this is a lot. Don't rush to process it. But Iris, you're not in danger because of me. You're protected by me. There's a difference. I replied before I could stop myself. How long do you intend to do this? His response was immediate. As long as you need protection, which, considering the world we live in, will probably be forever. This is madness. That's commitment. There's a difference. I turned my back to the window and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Damien's face, the intensity in his expression, the absolute certainty when he said, I've been protecting you. No one had ever protected me before. I had always been the protector, the caregiver, the one who helped others. Having someone reverse that role was disorienting and terrifying, and perhaps a little bit exactly what I needed. The following days were surreal. I tried to maintain my normal routine, but now I was hyper-aware of the protection around me. Julian was always there, keeping a respectful distance, but always visible. Damien appeared occasionally, never approaching unless I initiated contact, but always observing. And the messages kept coming, no longer from unknown numbers, but from a contact saved simply as D. Take an umbrella today. It's going to rain at 3 p.m. Avoid Pike Street tonight. Construction has blocked the sidewalk and it's dark. You worked 14 hours today. Go home. Rest. Small things. Practical precautions disguised as protection. And against all my better judgment, I started to respond. How do you know my work schedule? Because I pay attention. That's still scary. I know, but you're safe. Always. Sophie noticed the change immediately. You're different. More relaxed. No, that's not it. You're more aware of something. What happened? I hesitated, then told her everything. About Damien, about the protection, about the 18 months of good luck that weren't really luck. Sophie looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. Iris, do you understand what you're telling me? A crime boss has been stalking you for over a year. This isn't protection. It's obsession. He's not obsessive. He's careful, attentive. Even to my own ears, it sounded like an excuse. It's important to remember your birthday. This is like being on 24-hour watch. Sophie took my hands. Darling, you need to understand that men like that don't do things for free. There's always a price. There's always an expectation. He said he doesn't want anything. And you believe him? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, yes, I believed him. There was something in the way Damien spoke, the absolute sincerity in his voice, that made me believe his intentions were genuine, however twisted they might be. That night, I couldn't resist. I texted, "Can I ask you a question?" Always. Why me? Of all the people in Seattle, why did you choose to protect me? His reply took longer than usual. When it arrived, it was longer than any previous message. Because I watched you fight for a child that wasn't yours. I watched you put your career on the line testifying against a violent man. And when the judge asked why you cared so much, you said, because someone needs to. Because if I don't fight for her, who will? That answer changed something in me. It made me realize that there are still genuinely good people in the world, and people like that deserve to be protected. My eyes burned with unexpected tears. I was just doing my job. No, you went above and beyond the call of duty. You cared when it was easier not to. And that makes you special, Iris. You don't know me well enough to know if I'm special. Then let me get to know you better. Have dinner with me tomorrow. No guards, no cars, just the two of us. A conversation like normal people. I should have refused. Every rational instinct screamed at me to keep my distance. But the part of me that was tired of always being strong, always being the caregiver, wanted to accept. I wanted to know more about this complex and contradictory man who had dedicated 18 months to protecting me. Where? A quiet place. Safe. Let me surprise you. The following night, Julian picked me up not in an intimidating black car, but in a discreet sedan. He took me not to a fancy restaurant, but to a penthouse apartment overlooking Puget Sound. Damien was on the balcony, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, nothing like the expensive suits he usually wore. "I thought you might appreciate some privacy," he said as I joined him. "No prying eyes, no interruptions. Do you cook?" I looked at the set table, food that clearly hadn't been delivered. I learned this as a child. My grandmother insisted that everyone should know how to take care of themselves. He pulled out a chair for me. "Sit down. Let's talk like normal people, as I promised." Dinner was revealing. Damien wasn't what I expected. He was articulate, well-read, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. We talked about books, about Seattle, about how he ended up in this world. My father ran a small operation, nothing like what it is now. When he was murdered by rivals, I was 16. I could have run away, started over somewhere else, but my younger sister was with me. She was 12 and terrified, so I stayed. I took over my father's business, and over the years, I transformed it into something bigger. Your sister? Safe, living in London under a different name, working as a teacher. She doesn't really know what I do, only that I keep her protected. There was pain in her voice, similar to how I protect you. Except you know the truth. Why tell me the truth? Because you deserve honesty, and because— He hesitated. Because I want you to know me. Not my reputation, not the rumors, but who I really am. And who are you, Damien Cross? Someone who does bad things to protect those they love. Someone who lives in the shadows so that others may walk in the light. Someone who— His eyes met mine. Someone who fell in love with a woman who doesn't even know she's being hunted. My heart stopped. What? You're not safe by chance, Iris. There are people who want to hurt you. People connected to the cases you handle. Abusers you've denounced. Men who lost custody because of your testimony. They're vindictive, and some of them have dangerous connections. My blood ran cold. Are you saying I'm being hunted? I'm saying there have been 3 attempts to hurt you in the last 18 months. All of them eliminated before you even knew you were in danger. Damien leaned forward. Marcus, your ex didn't stop texting because he decided to move on. He was visited by some of my men who graphically explained what would happen if he contacted you again. The man who followed you from the subway station? He was hired by a father whose custody you helped remove. We intercepted him before he could do anything. The co-worker? He was gathering information about your routine for someone else. I stood up, needing space. Are you telling me that my life has been in danger and I didn't know? I'm saying your life was in danger until I started protecting you. Now you're safe because no one can reach you without going through me first. He remained seated, giving me space. And no one goes through me, Iris. This is crazy. I need to go to the police. And what am I supposed to say? That you suspect people want to hurt you, but you don't have proof? That a criminal told you that? His voice was gentle but realistic. The police can't protect you 24 hours a day. They don't have the resources, but I do. And I'm willing to use all of them to keep you safe. Why? My voice broke. Why care so much about someone you don't even know? Damien stood, approaching slowly, as if afraid of startling me. Because 18 months ago, I watched you fight for a child with everything you had. I watched you be kind in a cruel world. And I realized that if there was ever anyone worth protecting, it was you. He paused, vulnerability crossing his face. And somewhere along those months, watching you, protecting you, I fell in love. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it, but it happened. You can't fall in love with someone who only watches from afar. It wasn't from afar. He touched my face gently. I read all the reports you wrote. I watched you mediate impossible conflicts with infinite patience. I saw you comfort frightened children and defend abused mothers. I knew your essence, Iris, and I fell in love with it. I should have backed away. I should have walked away. Instead, I leaned into his touch. This can't work. You're a criminal. I work helping families escape violence. We're fundamental opposites. We complement each other. You fight within the system. I fight outside of it. But we both protect the vulnerable. His other hand found my face, framing it gently. I'm not asking you to change or to approve of what I do. I'm just asking you to let me continue protecting you. And maybe, Eventually, let me love you too. Damien, I know, it's very early, very intense, but I spent 18 months getting to know you while you didn't even know I existed. For me, this isn't sudden. It's inevitable. Before I could answer, my cell phone rang. Sophie, panic evident in her voice. Iris, you need to go back to the community center. Now. Something happened. Damien and I arrived at the Riverside Family Services Center to find police everywhere. My office had been ransacked, files scattered, my computer destroyed, and on the walls, written in red paint, "You can't save everyone, and you can't save yourself." When did this happen? Damien asked the commanding officer, his voice controlled but with a dangerous edge. About an hour ago. Someone broke in, looked for something and left this message. The police officer looked at me. Ms. Chen, do you have any idea who would do this? I had too many ideas. 18 months of cases, of testimonies, of helping people escape dangerous situations. Any one of them could have been seeking revenge. She's staying with me tonight, Damien said, leaving no room for argument. And every night until we find out who did this. Sir, and who are you? The policeman narrowed his eyes. A friend concerned about her safety. Damien didn't blink. And someone with the resources to protect her in a way the police department can't. The police officer clearly recognized Damien, or at least his reputation. He didn't argue. That night, in Damien's penthouse, I tried to process everything. The break-in, the threat, the reality that someone really wanted to hurt me. Damien gave me space, making tea, offering a blanket, not pressuring me to talk. You were right, she finally said, about me being hunted, and about needing protection. I wish I'd been wrong. He sat down beside me, keeping a respectful distance. Iris, I'm not happy that you're in danger, just relieved that I can do something about it. What are we going to do? We're going to find out who's behind this, and we're going to make sure they can never threaten you again. His eyes met mine. But you need to trust me, completely, even when my methods aren't legal, even when I do things you would disapprove of under normal circumstances. I'm trusting you now, aren't I? I'm here, in your home, letting you protect me. I took his hand. But Damien, I don't want you to become something you're not because of me. I don't want any more violence. Then I will do everything I can to resolve this without bloodshed. But if it comes to that, if the choice is between your safety and my morality, I choose you, every time. In the following days, Damien's team worked to trace the source of the threats. They discovered it wasn't just one person, but a network. Abusive parents who had lost custody because of my reports had banded together, hiring someone to intimidate me, perhaps even hurt me. The hacking was just the beginning. They're planning something bigger, Damien said, showing me intercepted messages. A meeting tonight. They're going to finalize plans. Let's go to the police. With what? Messages I obtained illegally? Evidence they won't admit in court? He shook his head. No, this needs to be resolved my way. What it means? It means that tonight, while they plot to hurt you, I will be there, and I will make it very clear that you are under my protection, that anyone who touches you answers to me. Damien, I can't let you risk your life. You're not letting me do anything. I'm making a choice, just like you choose to fight for children at risk. Just like you risk your safety to help strangers. He touched my face. Let me fight for you the same way. The operation took place that night. Damien wouldn't let me go, but later he told me everything. He and his men interrupted the meeting. There was no violence. There didn't need to be. Damien's mere presence, his reputation, was enough. He made it clear that I was under his personal protection, that anyone who even thought of hurting me would become his personal enemy. And making Damien cross your enemy was essentially a death sentence. It's over, he said when he returned. You're safe. How can you be sure? Because I gave each of them a choice. Leave Seattle immediately, or face the consequences. They all chose to leave. He paused. Except one. The leader. He's still a threat. What did you do with him? I gave the police department evidence of his crimes that they can't ignore. He's going to be arrested. Legally, as you prefer. Damien sat down beside me. I'm not a monster, Iris. I do what I need to protect the people I love, but I prefer solutions that you can live with. You keep saying you love me, but how can you love someone you barely know? I know you, maybe better than anyone else. He took my hand. I know you drink your coffee with 3 spoonfuls of sugar because you need the energy, but you really prefer tea. I know you work too hard because you feel you owe it to every child you help. I know you cry when you think no one is watching, because the weight of so many tragic stories is too much to carry alone. Tears were streaming down my face now. How do you know all this? Because I pay attention. Because I care. Because 18 months ago I decided you were worth protecting. And somewhere along the way, I realized you were worth loving too. This is madness. We shouldn't be operating. And yet we still work. He wiped my tears. Say you feel nothing and I'll back off. I'll go back to just protecting you from the shadows. But if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, I kissed him. I didn't plan it. I didn't think about it. I just leaned in and pressed my lips to his, releasing 18 months of unacknowledged tension. Fear transformed into relief, gratitude mixed with something deeper. Damien froze for a moment, then pulled me closer, deepening the kiss with an intensity that stole my breath. It was desperate and tender at the same time, full of unspoken promises and fragile hopes. When we parted, we were both breathless. This changes everything, I whispered. I know. Will you still protect me? Until the day I die, and even after that if there's a way. He rested his forehead against mine. I love you, Iris Chen. I've loved you since the moment I saw you fight for that child, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving I was worthy of it. You've already proven it. 18 months of silent protection, of constant care, of love I didn't even know existed. I held her face. I love you too, even knowing it's complicated, even knowing we'll have to figure out how to make this work. Then we'll find out together. He kissed me again, more gently this time, one day at a time. Epilogue. 5 years later, morning arrived with gentle rain pattering against the windows of our home in Queen Anne, painting Puget Sound in shades of gray and silver. I awoke to the sound of giggles coming from the next room, where our 3-year-old daughter, Lily, was undoubtedly waking her 6-month-old brother, Ethan. 5:30, Damien murmured beside me, but he was smiling. At least they waited until after 5 this year. Progress, I agreed, snuggling closer to him. 5 years had passed since that night when I confronted the man who had been protecting me from the shadows. 5 years since I discovered I was being hunted. 5 years since Damien Cross transformed from a silent protector into the love of my life. The path wasn't easy. There were significant challenges. Legal questions about the origin of his wealth, difficult questions from colleagues about his relationship with a known criminal. But Damien proved his transformation. Slowly, systematically, he legitimized his operations. Legal investments replaced illegal schemes. Protection of vulnerable communities replaced extortion. He used his power and connections for good, becoming something between a vigilante and a philanthropist. And I continued my work, helping families, testifying in court. But now with the security of knowing that someone was protecting me, that I wasn't alone in the trenches. Mommy, Daddy! Lily burst into the room, her dark hair wild, her eyes shining. Ethan's awake and he laughed at me. He laughed? Damien sat up, genuinely moved. Our boy is laughing? We followed Lily to the baby's room, where Ethan was happily kicking in his crib, smiling at his older sister. Damien picked him up with practiced tenderness, kissing his forehead. Watching him with our children still took my breath away sometimes. This man who once lived in shadows, now illuminated by pure paternal love. Remember when you told me you were protecting me? I asked later, after the children were busy with breakfast. That I was being hunted and didn't even know it? How could I forget? It was the night that changed everything. Damien pulled me into his arms. You saved my life that night, and every night since then. Not just from physical threats, but from loneliness, from carrying the weight of the world alone. You saved mine too. You gave me a reason to be better, to use my power for something more than just survival and revenge. He kissed my temple. You gave me family, purpose, love. From the other room, Lily called out, Mom, Dad, Uncle Julian is here. Julian, who had been my first silent protector, was now Lily's godfather and an essential part of our lives. He brought gifts, as always. Books for Lily, a teddy bear for Ethan. How's the program going? He asked. The program Damien had founded 2 years ago, the Safe Harbor Initiative, offering protection and resources to social workers and lawyers handling domestic violence cases. Inspired by me, funded by him, saving lives daily. Growing. We helped 43 families this month, I replied, and none of our social workers have been threatened. Their presence, even as silent patrons, keeps everyone safe. That's what power is for, Damien said, to protect those who protect others. Later that night, after the children were asleep and Julian had gone home, Damien and I stayed on the balcony watching the city lights below. Seattle had changed in the last 5 years, or perhaps we had changed, and the city looked different through our transformed eyes. "Do you regret it?" I asked. The question I had asked hundreds of times. Choosing a legitimate life? Giving up the power you had? Not once, because I gained something infinitely more valuable. He turned me in his arms. You, our children, a clear conscience, the ability to sleep at night without expecting rivals to invade. This isn't losing power, Iris. It's gaining freedom. And are you happy? Happier than I ever imagined possible. He kissed me softly. That night, 18 months before I finally met you, when I saw you fight for that child, I decided you were worth protecting. Best decision I ever made. Second best, I corrected. The best was when you decided to let me in, to let me get to know you, to let me love you. You're right. His arms tightened around me. Because protection is just survival, but love is living. And as we stood there, two survivors who had found each other under the most unlikely circumstances, I knew with absolute certainty. Some stories don't begin with love, they begin with protection, with a stranger deciding you're worth saving. But the best stories, the ones that truly matter, are those where protection blossoms into something deeper, where guardian becomes partner, where vigil transforms into devotion. And that was our story, not how it began, in shadows and secrets, but how it blossomed, in love, family, and the profound understanding that sometimes guardian angels wear unlikely clothes. Sometimes they have tattoos and scars and dangerous reputations, but their hearts, when finally opened, are the purest of all. "I love you, Damien Cross," I whispered into the darkness. "My protector, my partner, my everything. I love you, Iris Cross," he replied. "My light, my reason, my salvation." And on that quiet Seattle morning, with our children sleeping safely and our bright future ahead, we both knew. She may not have known she was being hunted, but the mob boss who cleared the path before she noticed did more than just protect her. He loved her, and in loving her, he found his own redemption. 10 years later, autumn had arrived in Seattle in all its melancholy glory. Golden and red leaves covered the University of Washington campus, where I now taught a graduate course in community social work. 10 years had passed since that night when I confronted the man who had been protecting me from the shadows. 10 years since I discovered I was being hunted. 10 years since Damien Cross transformed from a silent guardian into the love of my life. As I walked through the familiar hallways toward my classroom, I reflected on how impossible it all must have seemed that first night. Iris Chen, the idealistic social worker who believed in systems and legal processes, married to Damien Cross, former head of Seattle's criminal underworld. Our story defied all logic, all social convention, all sense of how relationships should work. But it worked. Against all odds, it worked. Professor Chen Cross, one of my students, Maya Rodriguez, rushed down the hall. "Do you have a minute? I'd like to discuss my project on witness protection in domestic violence cases." I smiled, recognizing the fire in her eyes. It was the same fire I had 10 years ago, the same tireless determination to make a difference. "Of course, Maya. Come in." As we discussed his project, my mind inevitably drifted back to my early years with Damien. The transition wasn't smooth. There were significant challenges that the previous epilogue only touched upon superficially. The truth was far more complex, far more painful, far more real. 6 months after that first confession of love, when Damien declared he loved me, and I, against all odds, reciprocated, we faced our first real crisis. The police had finally obtained substantial evidence against some of Damien's operations. Not recent activities. He was already in the process of legitimizing everything, but old crimes. Things he had done years before he met me. Things the law doesn't easily forget. I remember the night he came home, his face pale, his jaw clenched. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, something we had started doing together as a ritual, an attempt at normalcy amidst the chaos. He sat on the kitchen island, his head in his hands. "They have evidence," he said simply. "Enough to charge me. Enough for a meaningful sentence." My heart sank. How long have we been talking? 10 years. Maybe more, depending on how many charges they decide to file. His voice was monotonous, as if he had already accepted his fate. "Iris, I understand if you want to leave. I won't blame you. You didn't sign up to wait a decade while I'm in prison." I remember standing there, holding the wooden spoon I was using to stir the sauce, processing the words. 10 years. A decade of my life. I was 28. If he went to jail, I would be 38 when he got out. My fertile years. My peak professional years, all spent waiting. Are there any legal options? I finally asked. My lawyer is exploring plea deals, maybe cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. But Iris, any deal still means years. And it means testifying against people who once worked for me, people who aren't going to react well to that. So you make the deal. My voice came out firmer than I felt. You cooperate. You pay your debt to society. And I wait. He looked up, surprised, with something like pain crossing his face. You can't throw away your best years waiting for me. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing to stay with the man who protected me when no one else knew I needed protection. The man who risked everything to keep me safe. The man who... My voice broke. The man I love more than any plan I ever had for my life. Damien stood up, closing the distance between us, pulling me into his arms. And for the first time since I'd met him, I felt him tremble. Not from fear, but from overwhelming gratitude mixed with guilt. You deserve someone better. Someone without a criminal past, without pending legal threats, without all this mess. I don't want someone better. I want you. I held his face, forcing him to look at me. Damien Cross, you are not defined by the worst moments of your past. You are defined by who you chose to become. And the person you have become is someone worth waiting for. The following months were a whirlwind of legal hearings, negotiations, and agreements. Damien's lawyer, a brilliant man named Robert Chen, no relation to me, despite the shared surname, negotiated a deal that reduced the potential sentence to 5 years in exchange for full cooperation and testimony against higher-ranking figures in the organized crime hierarchy. 5 years is still an eternity, Damien said the night before his sentence was officially pronounced. We were in his apartment, our apartment now since I had moved in months before, watching Seattle through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Then we'll make it worthwhile, I replied, my hand finding his. You use these 5 years to completely transform yourself. I use these 5 years to strengthen the work I do. And when you leave, we start a new life, together. Are you going to visit me? The question came out vulnerable, almost childlike. Every week, without fail. I'll be the constant in your life while everything else changes. I turned to face him. But Damien, you need to promise me something. Anything. Use this time. Really use it. Don't just fulfill your obligations, but transform them. Get a formal education. Work through your anger, your trauma, whatever led you to this life. And when you get out as a man who not only paid his debt, but who became better because of it. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I promise. For you, I promise to become worthy of the sacrifice you're making. It's not a sacrifice, I corrected. It's an investment. In ourselves. In our future. The sentence was pronounced a week later. 5 years in a medium-security correctional institution, with the possibility of parole after 3 years for good behavior. I was in the courtroom gallery when the judge read the sentence, watching Damien accept his fate with a dignity that broke my heart. Before he was taken away, he turned and met my eyes across the crowded courtroom. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The promise was there, in his eyes. The determination, the love, the gratitude, and something more, hope. Hope that when all this was over, there would still be us. The first few months were the hardest. I visited every week without fail, driving 3 hours to the prison, going through humiliating security checks, sitting in sterile visiting rooms separated from Damien by bulletproof glass. We spoke through phones, our hands pressed against the glass in a pathetic imitation of touch. How are you supporting yourself? I always asked. I enrolled in classes, he replied during the 3rd visit. Business administration. The counselor said I can work toward an associate's degree. And there are therapy groups, anger management, trauma, rehabilitation. I'm doing it all, Iris. Like I promised. I'm proud of you. You shouldn't have to be here. You should be with someone who never put you in this position. But there was less self-reproach in his voice now, as if slowly, through therapy and reflection, he was beginning to believe he deserved redemption. While Damien served his sentence, my life continued in a strange state of suspension. I continued my work at the community center, but something had changed. The experience of being hunted, of being protected, of loving someone on the other side of the law, gave me a perspective that changed how I approached cases. I became less judgmental, more empathetic. I began to understand that people make impossible choices in impossible situations, that not everything is black and white, that sometimes the most effective protectors come from unexpected places. And I started working on something new, a pilot program to offer resources and protection to social workers and lawyers handling high-risk cases. I used the network of contacts Damien had left with me, loyal people who still respected him, who understood that he was paying his debt, to create a safety net that operated in the shadows where the police couldn't. Sophie thought I was crazy. Iris, you're literally building a watchdog network. I'm building a protection system for vulnerable people whom the legal system cannot adequately protect, I corrected. There's a difference. Semantics. But she sighed, acknowledging defeat. Just be careful, and please don't tell me details if they're illegal. The program, which I eventually called the Safe Harbor Initiative, started small. Just a few social workers in particularly dangerous situations. But it spread. Word got around that resources were available. Protection that didn't require police involvement, that understood the complexities of threats coming from abusive husbands, violent fathers, dangerous individuals that the system couldn't reach. When I visited Damien at the 1-year mark, I told him about the program. His eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. You're doing exactly what you've always dreamed of, but better. You're thinking outside the box. I learned from the best, I replied, smiling. But Damien, I need your help. Your connections, your contacts, the people who are still loyal to you. Can you connect them with me, officially, legally this time? You want to turn my criminal network into a legitimate security force for social workers? He seemed stunned, then impressed. Iris, that's brilliant. It's your legacy, I told him. Redemption isn't just about you changing. It's about using what you've built, the connections, the resources, for something good, something that helps instead of harming. In the years that followed, Safe Harbor grew. Julian, who remained fiercely loyal, became operational coordinator. He trained a team of people, many former members of Damien's organization who also wanted redemption, in discreet protection, counter-surveillance, and crisis intervention. All legal, all off the table, all funded by legitimate investments Damien had made before his arrest. And Damien, while serving his sentence, became part of the advisory board by correspondence. He sent letters detailing strategies, identifying potential vulnerabilities, offering decades of knowledge about how criminal minds operated. His insight was invaluable. You transformed something horrible into something beautiful, he wrote in a letter 2 years later. You took the worst of me and made it the best thing I've ever contributed to the world. How do you do that? I wrote back. I see who you truly are, not the mistakes you've made, but the person you've chosen to become. And that person is extraordinary. At age 3, Damien was eligible for parole. His lawyer presented a compelling case. Exemplary education. He had not only completed an associate's degree, but was working on a bachelor's degree. Spotless disciplinary records, extensive participation in therapy and rehabilitation programs, and testimonials from me, from Julian, from social workers Safe Harbor had protected, all speaking of Damien's continued positive impact even behind bars. The parole hearing was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of my life. I sat in the gallery, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles turned white, watching Damien testify about his transformation. I'm not going to pretend to be a victim, he told the parole board. I made choices, bad choices. I hurt people. I broke laws. And I deserve every day I've spent here. But I used that time. I learned about myself, about the trauma that led me down this path, and most importantly, I learned that it's possible to use power for good instead of evil. He gestured to me in the gallery. That woman over there, Iris Chen, she showed me what it truly means to care for someone, not to control, not to possess, but to genuinely protect. And I've built my entire life, both before and during this incarceration, around honoring what she taught me. The board deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the president announced his decision. Mr. Cross, this board rarely sees the level of genuine transformation you have demonstrated. Parole granted, effective in 30 days, with strict conditions including regular check-ins, ongoing community service, and lifelong involvement with the Safe Harbor Initiative as official community service. I cried, openly, without shame, as Damien turned and met my gaze across the room. The hope we had held for 3 years finally realized. His release, 30 days later, was one of the best days of my life. I was there when the gates opened, when he came out with a box containing his belongings, when his eyes met mine, and something broke inside him. He ran, really ran, closing the distance between us, catching me and spinning me around while we both laughed and cried simultaneously. 3 years, he whispered in my hair. 3 years without touching you, kissing you, really holding you. I thought I was going crazy. It was worth it, I replied, my face buried in his shoulder, breathing in his scent that was still so familiar. Every visit, every letter, every day of waiting was worth it. Reconster life outside of prison wasn't easy. Damien faced stigma everywhere. Ex-convict, ex-criminal, ex-everything. But he persevered. He completed his bachelor's degree in business administration, then enrolled in a master's program in criminal justice focused on reform and rehabilitation. I want to study the system that punished me, he explained, to understand how it works, where it fails, how it can be improved. Because, Iris, if my experience can help even one person avoid the path I took, or help a former convict successfully reintegrate, then it was all worthwhile. Safe Harbor exploded under his active leadership. Damien brought not only strategic knowledge but genuine empathy. He understood fear, hopelessness, the feeling of being trapped. And he used that understanding to create programs that actually worked. 5 years after his release, 8 years after his original sentence, we got married. Not a big ceremony, just something small and intimate. Sophie as my maid of honor, Julian as Damien's best man, a few dozen close friends and colleagues who had witnessed our impossible journey. Are you still sure? Damien asked on the morning of the wedding, while we were getting ready in separate rooms. Sophie insisted on tradition. He called, his voice heavy with lingering doubt. There's still time to back out, to choose someone without a complicated past. Damien Cross, I replied firmly. I'll be walking down that hall in 4 hours and marrying you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you understand that you were worthy of this love. Now hang up and finish getting dressed. The ceremony was perfect, simple yet profound. Damien wrote his own vows, reading them in a voice that trembled with emotion. Iris, you taught me that redemption is not only possible, but worth fighting for. You saw me at my worst, literally behind bars, and chose to stay. I promise to spend every remaining day deserving that choice, protecting you, honoring you, loving you with all that I am and all that I have become. My vows were simpler. Damien, you protected me before I even knew I needed it. And since then, you've been my rock, my partner, my best friend. I promise to walk beside you, no matter how difficult the path, because together, we've proven that even impossible stories can have happy endings. 2 years after the wedding, Lily was born, held for the first time by Damien, who wept openly, whispering, I will protect her the way I protected her mother. I will be the father she deserves. And he was. Damien was an extraordinary father, attentive, involved, playful. He took Lily on adventures, read to her every night, attended every school recital, and when Ethan was born 3 years later, his love only multiplied. Now, 10 years after that first confession of love, as I was finishing class and getting ready to go home, my phone vibrated. A message from Damien. Dinner is ready. The kids are eager to tell you about their day. I love you more today than yesterday, and more tomorrow than today. I smiled, gathering my things. The journey from naive social worker protected by a Mafia boss to teacher and mother, married to a redeemed man, was long and tortuous. But every step, every challenge, every moment of doubt was worth it. Because in the end, it's not where you start that defines you. It's what you choose to do with the opportunities for change. And Damien and I, against all odds, chose love. We chose redemption. We chose to build something beautiful from a broken foundation. Thank you for staying with me until the end. It's so special to know that you dedicate a little bit of your day to experiencing these stories with me. If this story touched your heart in any way, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your comment below. I want to hear from you. Do you believe that protection can turn into true love? That sometimes the most unlikely person is exactly the one life chooses to protect us? Your responses help me build this space that is so uniquely ours, full of emotion, impact, and unexpected connections. Until the next story, keep believing in redemption, in the silent guardians, and in that love that is born in the shadows, but illuminates everything when it arrives. A sincere hug from someone who believes that everyone deserves to be protected, including you.